Welcome Wargamers, Doug here from 2 Plus Stuff, and today we are going to be reviewing the Sylvaneth. This is the battle tome I've been very excited to see because if you know me and you followed the channel for a while, I really like the army. I like its aesthetics, I like the idea of this hit and run kind of guerrilla warfare type thing, but they've never played out on the table in a way that I liked. Mainly to do with the terrain rules and how many sets of wildwoods you have to have and how every single war scroll is so intricately tied to them. It never quite sat right. And so today we're going to do what I'm calling an abbreviated review of the book. I got this, the Skaven one, and the GHB all on the same day, the day before I'm allowed to talk about them, so I'm kind of in a mad dash to record my thoughts here. But instead of going war scroll by war scroll and word by word, instead I want to basically ask the question, did they make the army more fun by addressing the issues when it comes to terrain? Like, do I have to buy 3 kits of wildwoods? Is every unit so hamstrung by being near wildwoods that they are no fun to play in any other context? Like, let's talk about the army from kind of a bird's eye view. That's what we're going to be doing today. I do want to say though, thank you so much to Games Workshop for sending me this, and if you are interested in grabbing a copy of your own, please, I have an affiliate link in the description down below to Noble Knight Games. They save you money on every Games Workshop purchase, and anything that's bought through that link goes directly to helping support the channel, and it really does mean a lot. With all of that out of the way, let's talk about some tree folk. Now we're going to hop, skip, and jump right past all of the lore and stuff. I'm going to address those on, my deeper takes throughout the week. This is more a review of the army and asking the question, did they make it more fun? I'm not going to say did they make it fun, period, because I know a lot of people have been enjoying Sylvaneth. It's just with the terrain interactions, it wasn't working for me. So let's address those here. First up for the allegiance abilities, places of power. After territories are determined before faction terrain features are set up, you can pick up to 3 terrain features on the battlefield that are wholly outside enemy territory. Those terrain features are considered by you to be overgrown terrain features. At the start of your hero phase, you can heal 1 wound allocated to each friendly Sylvaneth unit that is wholly within 9 inches of an overgrown terrain feature or friendly awakened wildwood. So we're already kind of separating the wildwood from the idea of terrain in general, which is an immediate thumbs up from me. From the woodland depths, walk the hidden paths. Once per turn, at the end of your movement phase, you can pick 1 friendly Sylvaneth unit that is wholly within 9 inches of an overgrown terrain feature or wildwood. If you do so, remove that unit from the battlefield and set it up again more than 9 inches from all enemy units and wholly within 9 of either a different overgrown terrain feature that is more than 3 inches from all enemy units or a different friendly awakened wildwood that's more than 3 inches away. So faction-wide teleport, and you don't have to bring the woods to do it themselves. I like it. So you're at least getting 3 points on the battlefield to play your little teleportation games with. The next one is Strike and Fade. Once per turn, in your combat phase, immediately after a friendly Sylvaneth unit that is wholly within 9 inches of an overgrown terrain feature, or wildwood, has fought, you can remove that unit from the battlefield and set it up again more than 9 inches at a different terrain feature. I'm just going to abbreviate that a bit because it's a lot of jargon. But essentially, yeah, if they're near it, they can strike something, slap them, and then teleport away. And again, it's keyed to overgrown and wildwoods. Next up is Verdant Blessing. Is a spell that all Sylvaneth wizards know. You just gain this in addition to anything else. Casting value of 6, range of 18. If it's cast, set up 1 Awaken Wildwood terrain feature wholly within range and visible to the caster, and more than 3 from all other models, endless spells, invocations, blah, 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 and you add it to your army. So it's just a summoning spell for wildwoods. I like this page because it does 2 things. It divorces rules for wildwoods from the actual model kits themselves. Like, there are just other pieces of terrain that I can interact with meaningfully. I pick 3 of them, they gain overgrown. I love it. In addition, if you are already a Sylvaneth player and you feel duped because you bought 1,000 bunch of wildwoods, every single wizard in your army, which is a lot of your heroes by proportion to other factions, can summon them to the board. So it wasn't a waste, you might not use them all, but there is access to all the things that you have bought, and I like that. I feel like that's a good compromise. You don't have to buy 3 or 4 sets to play the faction in any kind of meaningful capacity. You can do that already. You start the game with 3 overgrown terrain features and 1 free wildwood. That's 4. That's awesome. Next up is Seasons of War. After you've picked a Sylvaneth army, you must pick which season applies to your army from the list below. I'm going to give you a spoiler. There's one that everyone's going to choose. The first one is the Burgeoning. Friendly Sylvaneth units that did not charge in the same turn and are wholly within 9 inches of an overgrown terrain feature or a friendly awakened wildwood have a ward of 6 up. That's great. A little more survivability. Nice. The next one is the Reaping. Add 3 inches to the range within which you can pick friendly Sylvaneth units with places of power and from the Wildwood Depth battle traits. Okay, so all of these things we talked about. Places of power from the Wild Land Depths. I don't know why that's so hard for me to say. You increase the range 3 inches. Okay, well, let's think about that. So now we have our hero phase. You can heal a unit, anyone within 12. Nice. You can teleport anyone within 12 instead of 9. Nice. Strike and fade, smack somebody, and teleport away within 12 instead of 9. That's incredible. All it does is just take all the things you're already taking, like you're already keeping track of, and magnify it. I feel like there's no reason to take anything else, but let's explore the other two. The Dwindling. In the hero phase, you can reroll 1 casting roll, 1 unbinding roll, and 1 dispel roll, so long as the friendly wizard you pick is a Sylvaneth wizard that's wholly within 9 of an overgrown terrain feature or a wildwood. That's cool. You can. So I mean, you're going to have a lot of casting, so that's great to be able to do that. I certainly watched my opponent Brennan playing Sylvaneth miscast like 2 times back to back. It was pretty glorious. That would help him out. Now, last one is Ever Dusk. Subtract 3 inches from the range in which you can do those things. So instead of 9 inches, all these same things go down to 6. Okay, so it straight debuff, but, however, if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with a melee weapon by a friendly Sylvaneth unit wholly within 6 inches of an overgrown terrain feature or wildwood is 6, that attack scores 2 hits on the target instead of 1. So you're trading in some of the hit and run aspects for straight damage dealing. Everdusk and the Reaping are the only two I could see people honestly taking. I mean, just because the other ones are so much more limited in their effect. The Reaping is awesome because it just does what the army wants to do more. Okay, I like that. And also it's simplified rules-wise. For me, it's just add 3 inches to all the stuff I already had to learn. The Everdusk is interesting because, yeah, you're leaning out of this stuff. You know, you reduce the range that those things happen. 6 inches to teleport, though, is still very accessible to do with things. You're still healing as long as you're on terrain features, so that's cool, but you're gaining the ability to do more damage. Now, if you are focused on objective play, like you're going to an event and it's not about thematic stuff, and there happen to be objectives on the table, terrain features on the table near objectives, this can get really, really nasty because now you're swinging way above your weight class. For some of these units that can throw buckets of dice, having them explode is massive. I have that rule on my Bone Splitters, on units of 5 or more, and the math is crazy awesome because you can end up doing more wounds than you did attacks, and by golly, it's just super fun. But in general, I mean, for the average player, I think the Reaping is going to be the default simply because it is truly the easiest to remember. You just add 3 inches to all the stuff you had to learn anyway. When it comes to command traits, these ones are for any Sylvaneth hero. So we have Gnarled Warrior. Ignore modifiers, positive and negative, for save rolls. Cool. Give him ethereal. I like it. Probably sounds real good on a tree lord. In the next one is Lord of Spites. In the combat phase, subtract 1 from the attacks characteristic of melee weapons used by enemy units to a minimum of 1 that finish a pile-in move within 3 inches of this general. This is an interesting one because it's not just attacking him. Instead, it's anyone within 3. So that finish a pile-in move within 3 inches. Yeah, so at that point, if someone's done a pile-in and they happen to be within 3 inches, so if they accidentally overspread and tag this hero, they're getting punished in a very real way for that. I think that there's some good use for that. It's essentially a debuff piece, and on a base the size of a Tree Lord or Tree Lord Ancient or Durthu or something like that, it could be really good. Lastly is War Singer. If this general is on the battlefield at the start of your movement phase, add 3 inches to the movement characteristic of friendly Sylvaneth units that start a move wholly within 12 inches of this general until the end of the phase. I like this one because it is definitely giving you some of that objective play oomph that they didn't have before, like just literally the ability to move forward and onto an objective. Typically Sylvaneth units are going to be somewhat slow, and that's generally offset by the teleportation things, but it just depends on where you can get those terrain features or wildwoods down. This kind of alleviates some of that dependency on the teleporting. So I think that is also a great choice. Actually, now that I think about it, these are all kick-ass choices. All 3 of them. I like them. Next one is Aspects of Renewal, Sylvaneth Wizard Heroes only. So we're moving kind of one step removed there. Nurtured by Magic. Once per turn in your hero phase, if the general successfully casts a spell that's not unbound, you can pick one friendly Sylvaneth unit wholly within 18 inches of the general. If you do so, you heal D3 wounds. It's fine. I don't hate it. Not my fave, but I don't hate it. Next is Spell Singer. When this general attempts to cast a spell before making the casting roll, you can pick one friendly Awakened Wildwood on the battlefield. If you do so and the spell is successfully cast and not unbound, you must measure the range and visibility from that spell from the Awakened Wildwood. So this gives you a chance to essentially turn a Wildwood into a spell portal with some more restrictions. I don't like things where you have to set up a combo. Like I want more. I like to be more reactionary. But it's one of those things. Like I say, it's like a janky spell portal. The spell portal is a freaking amazing spell. So it's just like keep in mind that even if as much as I don't like it, it's still very effective. And lastly is Radiant Spirit. Each time a friendly Sylvaneth unit wholly within 12 of this general is affected by a spell or abilities of an endless spell, on a 4-up you ignore it. Again, if you're going to get something magic heavy, that's fantastic. That's a great little shield aura, especially within 12 inches. Tree Lord Ancient is a wizard. That's a big old bubble. I like that. We come to Artifacts of Power, which is, I'm surprised. It's a little bit light. I feel like they could have combined this and the other one, but okay. So Artifacts of Power, this is for Sylvaneth heroes in general. We have the Greenwood Gladius. Pick one of the bearer's melee weapons. At the start of the combat phase, roll a d3. You add that to the attacks characteristic of that weapon. That could be cool. Crown of Fell Bowers. At the start of the combat phase, pick one enemy unit within 6 inches of the bearer. Add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made by friendly Sylvaneth units that target that unit in that phase. Another aggressive melee one. You can rush a hero up there. You can subtract 1 from their attacks characteristic and add 1 to wound rolls attacking that same unit. It's a cool combo. And the last one is Seed of Rebirth. The first time the bearer is slain, before removing them from play, roll a dice. On a 1, the bearer is slain. On a 2-up, the bearer is not slain. You heal D3 wounds and any remaining wounds are negated. So if you do put that on a big boy like a Tree Lord, good chance he's coming back for round 2, at least for a little bit. Then we come over to Relics of Nature, Eggcorn of the Ages, which is my fave. This unassuming Eggcorn is verdant with life given form. Once per battle at the start of your hero phase, if the bearer is on the battlefield, you can set up 1 Awakened Wildwood terrain feature wholly within 12, and it has to be more than 3 inches away from pretty much everything. Which, the fact that every wizard has access to a spell that already does that, I'm pretty lukewarm on it. Then again, there are some cheapest chips heroes where you can give that to them, but you're giving up a different artifact slot, so I'm not a fan. Oh yeah, what am I thinking? Yeah, these are just artifacts for wizards only, so why he already gets one with a spell every turn? I don't know. Next is Luneth's Lamp. The bearer can attempt to banish 1 invocation in the hero phase, even if they're not a priest. In addition, add 2 to dispelling rolls for banishment. Add 2 to dispelling rolls and banishment rolls for the bearer. That actually has some gas in the engine, because there's not a whole lot of things to address incantations or whatever. Invocation. I don't know why I say that wrong. I like that. That's an interesting one to keep in the pocket. And the last one here is the Vesper Gem. Once per turn in your hero phase, before the bearer attempts to cast a spell from the lore of the Deep Wood, meaning this spell lore, instead of making a casting roll for that spell, you can say that it will use the Vesper Gem. If you do so, that spell is automatically cast and cannot be unbound. After the effect of that spell has been resolved, roll a dice. On a 1, the bearer suffers D3 mortal wounds. Now, here's a fun little side note of how rules work from Uncle Doug. You have to remember, the spell to summon a Wildwood is not in your spell lore. That's an allegiance ability. So if you are in a bind and you need to get a Sylvaneth Wildwood on the table, this effect does not apply. It only affects these spells over here. That's just a little thing that matters. Don't accidentally do it to your opponent. And for the spell lores, I went ahead and read ahead. I'm just going to give you a very brief, synopsis of what they do rather than play by play. Throne of Vines, you can heal 1 wound to a caster, but my understanding is it doesn't have an end point. So Throne of Vines, if cast at the end of each phase until the start of your next hero phase. So each phase that they're in, you can heal a wound. Interesting. Regrowth is one where you can heal a unit for d6 wounds. The Dwellers Below, this is your basic, you pick a target, roll a dice for each model in the unit. On a 5-up, it does a mortal wound. Deadly Harvest is one where it hurts any number of enemy units that are within What is it? Casting value 3, a range of 3 inches. If cast, each enemy unit within range suffers D3 mortal wounds. You roll them separately. Verdurious Harmony, I pronounce that. You can return a model to a unit that's been slain. If it's Dryads, Tree Revenants, or Spite Revenant units, you heal D3 slain models rather than just one. And Tree Song, you can basically increase the rend characteristic of melee weapons by 1 for Sylvaneth units while they are wholly within 9 inches of that awakened wildwood. This one's interesting because you pick a wildwood as the target and anything in range of them gets this +1 rend to all their melee attacks. So that is a really, really cool thing. So if you do your teleporting and you just, level on really aggressively to one objective, this is cool where it can affect multiple things. So let's talk about the glades. There are a sum total of 7 now, and each of them have special rules. These are all in addition to everything we talked about before. Oakenbrow. When determining which row to use on the damage table of a Tree Lord Ancient, or Spirit of Durthu, it's treated as having suffered half the number of wounds that are actually allocated to it. Fantastic if you want to go heavy into them. Gnarl Root, once per turn, when you make a casting roll or unbinding roll for a wizard from this faction. It's wholly within 9 of an overgrown terrain feature or wildwood. You can roll 3d6 instead of 2d6. If you do so, remove 1 dice from your choice from the roll and then use the remaining dice to determine the casting or unbinding roll. Awesome, makes them great at wizarding. Roll 3 dice, take the lowest basically. Heartwood. After deployment, but before the first battle round begins, you can pick 3 different enemy units on the battlefield to be the quarry of the hunt. If you do so, add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by friendly Heartwood units that target those units. I like that in the sense of thematically they're hunting something. You just have to make sure that you have some meaningful way to keep track of where those units are and what they're doing. Ironbark, they gain a command ability. You use this command ability at the start of the enemy combat phase. The unit that receives the command must be a friendly Ironbark unit. It's wholly within 3 inches of an enemy unit that made a charge move in the same turn. Pick 1 enemy unit within 3 inches of that Ironbark unit and roll a dice. On a 2-up, it suffers D3 mortal wounds. You can use this command ability more than once in the same phase, but you cannot pick the same enemy unit more than once. It gives them spiky bark that's difficult to charge. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. If I spend a command point, I don't want to roll a die. That's my opinion. I'm sure there's cool things about it. Winterleaf. Enemy units within 3 inches of Winterleaf units cannot retreat. That's awesome. In addition, if you pick Everdusk from the Seasons of War battle trait for a Winterleaf army, enemy units within 3 inches of a Winterleaf unit cannot be removed from the battlefield through an effect that would allow them to be set up again later in the battle. I enjoy this a lot. It's basically what it was before, right? You can't retreat, but when you pick Everdusk, it basically super locks your opponent in, even if they have teleportation stuff. I like it. Next is Dreadwood. Once per battle, you can use the Walk Hidden Paths twice in the same turn, but if you do so, at least one of the units you pick must be a Dreadwood Spite Revenants unit. In addition, once per battle, you can use the Strike and Fade twice in the same thing, but it has to be a Spite Revenants unit. This is what I would choose, not because it's the best, but because I like Spite Revenants, and so giving me an incentive to do them is really, really cool. And lastly is Harvest Boon. After deployment, but before the first battle round, you can move each friendly Harvest Boon Spider Rider Lancers and Revenant Seekers unit up to 12 inches. If both players can do it, then whatever you roll a die, choose. Incentivizing pre-game movement is fantastic. I love it for my bone splitters. Giving it to the faster mounted units is really, really nice. Now, because of the amount of units in the book and kind of my time crunch when it comes to all 3 of these things coming the day before I'm allowed to talk about them, I'm not going to go war scroll by war scroll. Instead, I want to focus on Alariel because she's a character that I think has been problematic since her release. And then I want to talk about some points and other things like that, and then kind of have a good discussion about where I think the army's at now. So chatting about Alariel. She's pricey. One of the preview articles showed her price, and let me get the actual number right here. Yeah, 840 points. So she got more expensive, but let's talk about this because this is a complete War Scroll rewrite. She has a movement starting at 16 on that massive base of hers. I like that a lot. 16 wounds, 3 up save, and 10 bravery. Off to a great start. Spear Carnothy, 24-inch range, 1 attack, which means what? It's always going to miss no matter what. 2s to hit, 2s to wound. You'll be surprised how many ones you roll. -2 rend, and for the damage, flat 6. That's That's pure sexiness. Melee weapons, they're both 1 inch ranged, 4 attacks each. The first one is Talon of the Dwindling, 3s to hit, 4s to wound, no rend, and 1 damage. But it has this special rule down below. At the end of any phase, if any wounds inflicted by this unit's talons were allocated to an enemy model and not negated, and that enemy model has not been slain, roll a dice. On a 6-up, the enemy model is slain. So he has a permadeath, she has a permadeath thing built in, much like the Corn Lord with the reality splitting axe. Next is the Great Antlers, 3s to hit, 2s to wound, -2 rend, and the damage starts at 5. Ugh. That's nice. Her chart, she starts going downward after 6 wounds, which is, I think, a good, respectable number. She is a wizard. She can cast 3 spells and unbind 3 spells. If she's in a Sylvaneth army, she knows every single spell from the Lore of the Deep Woods, which is what we covered before. Of course, she also has the one where she can summon forests and stuff like that. She can fly, which should be Life Bloom. In your hero phase, you can heal up to 2d6 wounds allocated to this unit, period. That's the end of the sentence. You just get it. You just do. Unlike other heroic actions to heal, she doesn't have to be outside of 3. She just heals 2d6. Yes, please. In addition, once per battle at the end of your hero phase, if this unit has been destroyed, you can roll a dice and add the number of the current battle round to the roll. On a 6-up, you can set up this unit on the battlefield wholly within 12 inches of an overgrown terrain feature or friendly awakened wildwood more than 9 inches from all enemy units and with 8 wounds allocated to it. Now, timing wise, this means she's not going to be able to respawn and then heal because it's in the hero phase when she heals, after the hero phase when she can do this. And also keep in mind, you don't have to roll it the round after she's died. It's once per game, but say she dies round 1. Okay, something terrible, awful happens. Well, if you do it immediately, right, let's say you go second that round, you're rolling a die, adding 1, you're looking for a 6. Or you could wait a bit, because there's no reason, this doesn't say anything you can't, wait till round 3 or 4 where she would be more impactful, and then try it, and now you're adding 3 or 4 to that die roll and trying to get a 6 or better. So, just kind of keep in mind, there's a little bit of play there. You can be really aggressive with her early, and then knowing you're going to try to yo-yo her back into life afterwards later on. Living Battering Ram. If you carry out a Stomp Monstrous Rampage with this unit, and the enemy unit you picked has a wounds characteristic of 1, it suffers d6 mortal wounds instead of d3. You still have to do the 2-up roll, but that's nasty. Soul Amorphi. Amphorae. I don't know how to pronounce that. Once per battle, at the end of your movement phase, you can summon one of the following units to the battlefield. 1 unit of Dryads of 20 models, Tree Revenants of 10 models, Spite Revenants of 10 models, Kurnothi Hunters of 3 models, 1 Branch Witch, or 1 Tree Lord. The summon unit is added to your army, must be set up wholly within 9 inches of this model and more than 9 from enemy units. Wonderful. She can come onto the board, summon a free thing, be aggressive, die, and then hopefully come back later. And when she comes back, remember it's from a different direction because it's any awakened wildwood. So she could have died over here if your wildwood's over here. This is where she comes back. So it's just different angles of threat. Next is Swirling Glow Spites. This unit can retreat and still shoot and charge later in the turn. Are you kidding me? That's amazing with a 16-inch move and a big old fat base like this. We already covered Talon of Dwindling. That's her special role for the attack. Next, she has Metamorphosis. It's a spell, value of 7, casting range of 16. If cast, pick 1 enemy unit within range and visible to the caster and roll a number of dice equal to the casting roll. For each 3-up, that unit suffers a mortal wound. If a unit is destroyed by a mortal wound caused by the spell before removing the last model from that unit from play, you can set up 1 Awakened Wildwood terrain feature consisting of 1 scenery piece wholly within 12 inches of that model. So basically, yes, you can ice them and turn them into a forest, provided that there's room to be added to the table. Little situational, but I don't hate it. And the last rule here is Right of Life. Once per battle, this is a big one, so listen up if you're a Sylvaneth player. Once per battle, at the start of your hero phase, you can say Alariel will give voice to a verse of the Right of Life. If you do so until the end of that turn, all terrain features on the battlefield that are not already considered by you to be overgrown terrain features are considered by you to be overgrown terrain features. So you start the game with 3. If you bring Alariel once per game, literally every single thing on the board becomes overgrown for the purposes of getting you all of your bonus attacks when it comes to whatever kind of season you're a part of. If you do that season where you get bonuses within 6 inches of a terrain feature, but you explode hits, you get that on every terrain feature. You can teleport between any terrain feature. You can do hit and run things, any terrain feature. That's awesome. And the reason I like this, I have no idea how she's going to do on the table. I never claimed to be a competitive game commenter or anything like that. But when I look at a deity level character coming to the table, this is the kind of crap that I want. Okay? She comes into the board. 1, she's super hard to kill. 16 wounds and a 3-up is not nothing. She doesn't have a ward, but I'm okay with that. That can make her unique amongst other heroes. I mean, I know Tech List doesn't either, but you know what I mean. She can be aggressive, and she can die, and she can come back to life. She gives you a free unit that she summons to the board, and she can fundamentally change the table for a turn to let the rest of the army do everything it wants to do. I love it. I love it. And if you're not happy with it and you think it costs too much, sell me your Sylvaneth army. No joke. I really think this is a fantastic depiction of a deity on the tabletop, because it just, her presence changes a lot of things. Yeah, a lot of them are once per turn. I don't care. Once per turn, I can do whatever I want. Remember, enemy terrain features become overgrown. All this stuff. I think it looks awesome. If there's any huge glaring issues that you caught that I missed, leave them in the comments down below. I'd really love to hear about them. I just think she's cool. And the last thing I want to touch on here before our big discussion is just talking about not so much the points, but the way things function differently. So, the Kurnoth stuff really seems to be focused into the Heartwood army. So your Kurnoth hunters of all shapes and sizes, great swords, bows, or scythes are all battle line in a Heartwood army. In Harvest Boon, Revenant Seekers become battle line. In Harvest Boon, you also get Spite Rider Lancers. Those are the ones who get the pregame move. In Dreadwood, you get Spite Revenants, which is my jam. And let's see, in Tree Lords become battle line in Oakenbrow. So I'm okay with that. Tree Lords as battle line sounds cool to me. Now, because of time constraints, like I said, I don't have time to go into every single war scroll and stuff. What I will say though is that this book has 180 flipped my opinion on Sylvaneth. You truly do not need to own a Wildwood to play this army. Straight up, that's an immediate win for me, because I never liked the idea of terrain being inextricably tied to a faction. Instead, if you wanted to go without it, you can to start your early games, and you just have to make sure there's terrain on the board to be able to use as overgrown. I like that a lot. And then when it comes to Wildwoods, yeah, you get one for free, and that's awesome. You should probably maybe have a second one in case you want to summon things, but you don't need to do the whole 5 or 6 whatever ridiculousness that some folks were doing earlier on. Alariel feels like a deity level character now. I like that a lot of her rules, they're fairly simple. Like she has a full page of text, but I feel for some reason like reading Nagash's war scroll is way harder than hers. Just the amount of crap going on with all the spell books and his degrade chart and stuff like that. I find hers to be very simple. I understand every single rule very clearly, and they all feel like life magic happening. Like there are scenes from the books where she's charging a Nurgle fortress and life is just erupting around her, like dryads just suddenly come into existence, like the whale from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? And just spontaneous creation. She's doing that by bringing models to the table, but also by exuding life magic into terrain features. I guess a fancy word I hear Vince Ventrella use is verisimilitude, the idea of like it feels like what it should based on its description. I think they nailed it with Alariel. We'll see how it goes in competitive play, but I mean, just by virtue of the fact of you start the game with 4 pieces of terrain accessible to you for your rules, and you only had to buy one of them, 3 pieces of terrain for Overgrown, 1 Awakened Wildwood, that's terrific. The only thing I would recommend people do, and this is like if you're not playing Sylvaneth, but you're looking out for gotcha type things, there are some rules that interact with Overgrown or Awaken Wildwood, and then there's some rules that are just Wildwood. So just if you're playing against a Sylvaneth player in these early games when they're first learning their armies, be gentle, don't be a dick about it, but say, hey, can you double check for me, is that Wildwood or Overgrown? Because it is gonna legitimately confuse some newer folks as well as experienced players if they just kind of breezed over it. But beyond that, the army looks great. It has me being more excited for Sylvaneth than I've ever been before. And I'm going to hold on to the book for a bit. I actually have the Sylvaneth half of Echoes of Doom, and I just want to see. I want to give it a bit and see if it appeals to me enough to actually paint them up, because on the surface it sounds really cool. Anyway, friends, I want to hear your thoughts on this faction. Please leave in the comments down below. We're going to be tackling their lore here pretty soon. I have a very special redo of my lore series that I'm working on, but it's going to take a little bit of time, but I promise you'll enjoy it when we get there. Let me know your thoughts on the Battle Tome overall from the Allegiance abilities and stuff, and I'd love to continue the conversation down below. So thank you, and happy wargaming.